What's up, guys? It's Cargo, and this is a death match on Seaside, which I'm playing with an atomizer. This is the second game I played with the atomizer. The first one was kind of a half game where I kind of jumped in midway through. So I picked the second game that I played. And right now I'm using a hazmat suit, thermal vision, radar beacon, and scan jammer. And of course everything's fully upgraded. But the goal of this was to pick a few weapons that I thought were overpowered, so I hadn't played with them before, and the most obvious one to me was the atomizer. Because from my experience, from what I've heard on the forums, it's kind of it seems to be an overpowered weapon, because whenever you get in close contact with it, there's essentially not much you can do. You're dead. You're dead. We'll just leave it at that. So I tried it out, and what I found is that I do not think that the atomizer is OP at all. Now, before you start typing in the comments or anything complaining about that comment, let me explain myself. Number one, I do not think that it takes any skill to use the atomizer. It's not an overpowered weapon, but people who use this weapon exclusively have no talent. So, I mean, if you just want to pick it up for a couple games, that's fine. I mean, I by no means am touting just not using weapons, because I think they're all really fun to use. But no, this gun does not take skill to use. But two, the reason it's not overpowered, I think I'll start off with an argument that I do believe that people will get the ideas balanced and equal mixed up sometimes. Because a lot of times when people say, oh, the guns aren't balanced, they mean that the guns aren't equal. Saying that while and they want equal guns to be pretty much the same DPS, the same stopping power, relatively similar range, I mean, for the weapon, and it's similar weapons of its class. And they just want only slight tweaks to the actual stats of the weapon. But essentially the weapons are the same. They just trade off a tiny bit of range for a tiny bit of stopping power. Whereas balance, which I think Resistance 3 does really well with their weapons, is making weapons with significantly different stats as far as range, stopping power, damage, and those type of things, but making them work so that they're very useful in certain situations. For example, I think the Wildfire and the Atomizer are the best examples of this, where they both are for essentially taking out groups of clumped up people. The Wildfire is best at doing this at range for obvious reasons, because I cannot tell you how many times I kill myself when I'm using the Wildfire from close range. And the Atomizer is for doing the exact same thing except at close range. And so I think that people just need to realize when it's appropriate for weapons to be equal and when it's just appropriate for them to be balanced. And I do think these guns are balanced, and I'll give you a couple examples. When I have used the Atomizer, I've gotten locked down several times. And part of it might be because, I just wasn't playing that well that game. But it's mostly when people of just moderate intelligence and skill realize that you're being a dick and running around with an atomizer, they switch to weapons and tactics that counter it, namely range. Now, of course, you're not going to be able to outrange somebody with an atomizer all the time, because they might sneak up on you. And that's just a fact of life. Just as if you have an atomizer, somebody with a sniper might be sitting at the end of the corridor. There's not much you can do about that. It's just a fact of life. And the same thing with the Wildfire. If somebody realizes you're shooting down hallways full of people with a Wildfire, then they'll switch up their tactics. They'll grab a shotgun or an atomizer, or just a Thompson, and flank me and then hit me in the back, essentially, when I'm not paying attention, because I'm too concentrated on firing down the hallway. So yes, there's the difference between balance and equality, essentially. And I do think that Resistance 3 has balanced the weapons very well. Each weapon has certain uses. And of course, there are more versatile weapons than others. For example, the Thompson is a good all-around weapon. You can use it at close range or far range. But then there's more specialized weapons such as Wildfire, the Atomizer, the Cryo Gun, things like that that are better in certain situations. So essentially, the Atomizer is not overpowered. It's really good at close range combat and doesn't take a whole lot of skill to use, which I think is what gets on most people's nerves, is that people claim to be good with the Atomizer, but they're but the Atomizer auto-locks if you're just in the center of the screen. But yeah, so I think everybody should stop complaining about the lack of balance in the game, because I think the game's very balanced. And it just takes a little bit to get used to the different strategies that are required to use each of the weapons. But yeah, that's it. This game was amazing. Considering it's my second game with the Atomizer, I was surprised yet not surprised that I won this deathmatch, because deathmatches are one of the harder modes to win just because people are spawning all around you constantly. It was one of the more beastly matches of my deathmatch career, where I outkilled everybody by 15 kills. That is right, the next closest person in this game was 15-6. Which any other time would be a good, decent number of kills and decent number of deaths, but not this time. But I was pleased, yet not surprised. LOL Atomizer. But thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Keep calm and super champion.